Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be continuing the 92 F1 rebuild series, and in this video we're going to be getting the new beam kit mounted to the truck. We have gone ahead and done some things off camera. Christian, do you want to kind of explain what's been going on around here?
Yeah, so like he just said, we kind of got everything just thrown underneath the truck. That way we can kind of just get an idea based off of what we were doing in the computer on the actual truck. So we did get the beam pivots tacked in place just based off of a couple measurements that we took to the frame, and got those hung up on there. We got the beams underneath the truck just kind of roughly sitting where they need to be, and then the radius arms are connected to the beams just kind of sitting up on jack stands down in there. We do realize now, just being able to see it actually underneath the truck, we're gonna have to move a couple things from where it's at right now to have everything clear properly. But that's going to come with us getting everything actually underneath the truck and the radius arm mounts there, so we can start cycling things and all of that. So
yeah, so the main issue he's talking about is on this beam right here. You can see it's touching the back side of the engine cross member. When I drew everything up in CAD, I didn't take these ears and draw those in as well, and the cross member in CAD wasn't perfectly positioned. It was a little off, so that we're going to have to move the suspension kit forward probably a little bit, which isn't an issue because at some point we would like to run 40s on this truck.
yeah,
and we don't want to cut a lot out of this firewall if we don't have to. We kind of want to balance things in between a little bit more. So that's probably not going to be an issue if we have to end up going that route. But this is all part of the process when you're designing everything from scratch and you don't have the exact frame drawn up in CAD and you're going off measurements that you took. You're going to have to kind of figure everything out on that first run and go from there, go back in CAD and adjust files a little bit. So that's just part of the process, so nothing too bad to worry about. The next step that we're currently working on is getting the radius arm mount made. So that stuff's just free floating right now. On the bench over here, we did get the mount tacked up. You guys probably recognize this from the CAD drawing, but we used a 2-inch tube and sat everything on there and got it all tacked together. Everything's looking good. Christian got these spacers machined, and you want to talk about...
How did I machine those, huh?
You want to talk about it?
Yeah, so I ended up picking up a little lathe, a little benchtop lathe, just to be able to do this stuff. And my brother, somehow we messed up the width of this radius arm mount right here, and our misalignments were 2.5 inches spread, and all this stuff is built off of 2 1/4 inch spread. So I had to take all the misalignments down about 1/4 inch, just to be able to get everything to fit in this setup. So I did go out and buy a lathe just to be able to do this stuff. And it's going to be able to obviously be used for stuff in the future, which is now, after using this, just doing this simple stuff right here, I don't know how we have not had a lathe.
Yeah, it's going to be super useful, especially when we're doing like the new swingers and stuff, to build and machine down the bronze bushings for those. We can do that all here now. We don't have to hire someone to do it. So let's just say I intentionally messed this up, so you had to buy a lathe.
Yeah, so I had to go spend a bunch of money.
Yeah.
Cool.
So this is tacked up. We need to start working on the cross member that's going to go across frame rail to frame rail. That's going to capture this mount. And that's what some of this stuff's for right here. These will come off of the bottom of the frame, and you can tell these are a little bit different. So these will be together. There's a gap right here because on the frame it's not flat. So to get these mounts, rather than being kicked to being flat, they have to be a little bit different. So that's what that's all about right there. And then some of these right here are just going to be used with a tube to create a little cap across. So guys will see what I'm talking about. But that piece will go in between the 2 tabs on the frame. So right now we just need to get some tubes cut in order to get these pieces made, and then we can start figuring out exactly where this radius arm mount is. I'll have to go back into CAD and kind of figure out what we set up, and then we'll start getting that tube made to go frame rail to frame rail. Bubba. Alright, you ready to talk about this thing?
Yeah.
Alright. So Christian and I have been doing quite a few things on the truck. Like we were mentioning before, since this frame isn't exactly how we drew it up in SolidWorks, going from that to this, you got to change a bunch of things and kind of play around with everything. So we got the radius arm cross member all in. You just got a tube with two smaller bends on it. This is actually the second tube that we made for this mount. The first one just brought it down way too low. So this one we did a little bit less angle in the bends and it brought it up closer to this tranny pan. One thing we had to keep in mind when building this cross member is one, the clearance of the radius arms to the tranny pan. So this side you don't have to worry about, but the other side it is right there.
Scope that exhaust clearance too.
Yeah, so we knew we were gonna have to rebuild the exhaust, but now you can kind of see, if I can get the angle right, how close it is. It comes literally straight down into that radius arm. So this right here is probably gonna have to get cut and bent so the exhaust can come up above all this and then route back to the end of the truck. But that's we'll save that for future for the future.
Yeah, that's we gotta pull the headers and do a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. And then also on this cross member, like you saw me mentioning in the first video, we're gonna add two tubes coming from the middle of this and then coming out to this tranny cross member right here. So that'll make it so when we're hitting bumps and stuff, there's not going to be a tendency for this to want to bend out. It'll be supported with some tubes right there and be all strong.
I'm also going to add, it's going to go to here, and then it's going to triangulate back to, like if you look on the inside of the frame rail right there, the first nut that you see, it's going to go to that too. So it'll all be removable, and then it'll just tie itself all the way back into the frame rail again instead of just coming to here, because that way if we get a super hard load through this, it's not just going to this one tube, it'll be triangulated into the frame rails and just make it a whole lot stronger too.
We're gonna be fully braced, brother.
Fully braced.
So yeah, this frame rail should be super strong. Everything should be tied in together. That'll also help with the frame, making sure things don't deflect, because I'm sure this frame is moving all over the place when we're driving, especially up front. So just bracing in general will help with the truck.
Come here, dude. What are you doing?
When it comes to the engine cross member, it's been a little bit more of an issue than we originally thought. We knew that the cross member would limit the up travel of the beam kit, but that back flange that you see actually comes in contact with the back beam, so we're gonna have to clearance that out a little bit. One thing I didn't account for in SolidWorks either is that the cross member is offset to the left side of the truck because the whole drivetrain is offset. One thing that does is it limits this side more when it comes to bump compared to the other side. What we're gonna do to accommodate for that is notch the cross member right in this area right here, and then we're going to plate it back in, right in there. One thing we do have to keep in mind when doing that though is the clearance to the engine pan right there. If we notch it too high, it's going to come in contact with that. So what we'll end up doing is notch this side and get it to bump out as high as we can, and then match it on this side. This side is bumped out currently, the other side can't get nearly this high. So right now the track width on the truck is right around 89, which that's what it was before, right?
Really close, yeah.
Okay, and our wheelbase right now is around 135.25, which again is pretty much exactly what it was before. So we know this beam kit is pretty much where it needs to be. Now we just need to clearance everything else for the beam kit. Well, beams can fully cycle now. That side was not an issue, but as we noted, this side was an issue and it could barely come up, or it couldn't come up all the way because of the engine cross member. But as you can see, that is no longer an issue. So Christian and I spent some time cutting this out and getting a 3-inch piece of tube trimmed up in there so it fits nicely. And then Christian over there spent a bunch of time welding it in and blending it. How's that?
It was not that fun.
Yeah, but clearly you can see the results and everything came out super nicely. If you didn't know that wasn't supposed to be there, you would never even be able to tell. So you did a super nice job just getting that all Frenched in there, dude. That's your new favorite term. We'll get both sides up on jack stands so you can see about where full bump's going to be with this new kit. Dang, dog. Got a little Tuck Tuesday action going here?
Yeah, it's definitely better than it was.
Yeah. Is this more up travel than we had before?
Yeah,
It's a little bit higher? And
we were before with the old beams to the bottom of the frame rail. It was like 3.5 to 4 inches.
yeah, but it also depends where the beam mounts are too.
That too, but just that portion of it was 4 inches. Now we're 1 inch, 1.25 inches.
Yeah, so good point. So down here, what he's talking about is the clearance from the top of the beam to the bottom of the frame rail right there. We're at about 1 inch on each side, so we're pretty maxed out on bump. We can't really bump things out higher, and you also have to keep in mind the clearance of the radius arm right there to the frame rail as well. That's getting pretty tight. Now coming down here, you can really see what we did by clearancing the engine cross member, how the beam tucks up nicely in where that tube is. So that's what allows us to have equal bump on each side, so everything's all set there now and cleared. I guess now we kind of know why a lot of people just ditch that engine cross member entirely.
Yeah.
Just because it gets in the way of quite a few things. But we chose not to just ditch it because it's already in the truck. We have our motor mount set. It would have just been a lot more work to ditch this thing entirely. If we were building the truck from scratch and hadn't done anything for the motor yet, we would probably just ditch that thing.
Yeah, but that's a live and you learn experience right there.
Yeah, and obviously we never even planned to have equal length beams on this truck. If you recall in the first video of this rebuild series when I was going over the design of the beam kit in SolidWorks, I mentioned that we were going to support this beam mount a little bit more. What we're likely going to do is run a tube from the inside of the mount over to the inside of the engine cross member. Since this mount is so far below the frame rail, it might want to move around, so that tube's just going to hold it all in place super nicely. That's about it as far as mounting this beam kit goes. We are likely going to build those tubes for the beam mounts off camera, as well as clearance the firewall off camera. I am pretty surprised at how smoothly this kit went together. For not really having any specific reference on the truck to go off of, I think we got it all placed nicely. Everything sits where it's supposed to be. We didn't have to redo anything.
Yeah, it was definitely a learning experience, but we got it handled pretty easily.
Yeah, so I'm pumped on the turnout, but that's going to end it for this video. If you guys liked it, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.
Peace.